Financial freedom is really important to me, it's really close to my heart. This is the second of two videos about financial freedom. In the first one, I talk about the conflict between inflation and deflation that we currently have, and set the scene really for what we can do to protect ourselves, to make sure that our money works for us, but in order to do that, we need to protect ourselves in what could be quite difficult times. So this is the second of two videos about financial freedom. If you haven't seen the first one, the link is in the description, so please have a look at that first, because that is the background to this video. At the moment we're in a situation where there are deflationary, inflationary forces. So if you want to achieve financial freedom, you need to be aware of that conflict. The first thing that concerned me was the £85,000 limit on what you can have in a bank account and still be protected by the government. The powers that be are talking about this quite a lot, and it suggests to me that when the next crisis happens, that they may well ask the people who have money in their bank accounts to actually pay some of the cost, and they're sort of setting that up in advance. So I think being aware that £85,000, we're being told about it, and we're being told about it for a reason. And I think most people just see the warning, think it's a load of junk mail, and just put in the recycling. But I think that they're telling us something important, and they're warning us, so in the future they can say, you were warned. So we've got a conflict here between inflation and deflation, and you almost need completely opposite strategies to deal with each one. So first of all, let's look at deflation. So the big thing about deflation is debt, because if you've got a lot of debt and we're in a deflationary environment, then debt becomes more valuable, more expensive to service, and the assets that are securing that debt can become less valuable. So let's have a look at that. So if you've got some property, if you've got a buy-to-let property, so if you've got a buy-to-let property and you've got a mortgage, so with a buy-to-let property that's worth 120,000 and you've got a £100,000 mortgage, that's fine, you can probably service it, the bank will probably just about give you the loan for it. But what happens in a deflationary environment is that the mortgage stays the same, but the property reduces in value. So if it went down by £10,000, what's happened is your equity, so the value of the property went down from 120,000 to 110,000. The equity that you've got in that house goes down from 20,000 to 10,000. And with £10,000 worth of equity, then you can no longer get a remortgage on it. So there's a real risk if you've got too much borrowing. Servicing the debt becomes more difficult. You won't be able to remortgage assets, and it can wipe you out financially. So in terms of financial freedom, not being wiped out financially is fundamental. So not having too much debt is a really important part of protecting yourself in an environment where we might have inflation, but we might have deflation. But protecting yourself against deflation, because if that deflation lasts for 2 or 3 years, you might not survive for long enough financially to take advantage of the inflation and the increased property prices when they come along. So being able to survive for a period of time under either circumstances is really important. So management of debt is fundamental to thriving in the current environment. So having looked at debt, let's talk about what you can invest in. So to my mind, there are 4 different investment categories. There's financial assets. Now, very often when we think about investing, we just look at financial assets. But actually there's much more than financial assets. When I talk about financial assets, I mean cash at your bank, stocks and shares, government bonds, all the things that sort of financial advisors normally advise you to invest in, financial assets. But the reason I treat them as one asset category is that they're all subject to sort of inflation. So if inflation takes off, the value of all financial assets becomes less valuable. But at the same time, you can get bubbles in financial assets and all financial assets at the same time. So financial assets can be really important, but we all know that financial assets are just entries on a computer screen, and there is a sort of surreal aspect to them. So being protected so that you get financial freedom and can maintain that financial freedom, it's really important to be diversified so you don't just have financial assets. Now, I've talked about property, and there are risks around having too much debt on property, but that doesn't mean it's not an important asset category. It definitely is. And property in inflationary times can be really good, partly because you've got moderate debt, that gets inflated away, but also because it's a real asset. It's there, even if property prices halve, if they double, whatever they do, the property is still there, the rental income is still there. So it gives you a security and a real asset that will help you create that freedom that I think is really important. Having a small business is different to a financial asset because you actually control it. It's not like having a share in a public company that you can buy and sell on the stock market, because the investment value of it is not dependent on whether the stock market's high, low, what somebody in the city thinks today, what they had for lunch, I don't know, whatever. They're real cash flows from your endeavours in your small business, and you can control those. So it's a different sort of category, and I think it's an important part of creating that freedom for yourself and having a diverse portfolio. But in very uncertain times, and we're definitely in uncertain times, I think having some valuable assets. So when I'm talking about valuables, I'm talking about having, gold, jewellery, in cars. The value of investment cars has gone up hugely. That's things that have enduring value, that will be valuable in the bad times and will be valuable in the good times. The reason I talk about gold is because it's been valuable forever. Now, that doesn't mean that it doesn't go up and down in price. It definitely does. If you go back 20 years, the value of an ounce of gold was maybe about £200 an ounce. Now it's £1,200 an ounce. That doesn't mean it can't go back down, but you've always got that valuable, and it's always protecting you so that you can be protected. And if you're protected, it means you can take advantage of the good times, which I assume will come back at some stage. The reason that I'm concerned, the reason that I think that you need to be diverse, and the reason that I want to be diverse for my own financial freedom, is that we live in these really uncertain times. You've got huge inflationary forces, you've got huge deflationary forces. At the moment, they're counteracting each other. So overall, we seem to be sailing in smooth waters, but we're not really. There's these conflicting forces. What they're likely to lead to is gyrations in the markets. And I think it's really important not to be concerned about those. And if you've got a diverse portfolio of different sorts of assets, when one goes up, one goes down, then you don't have to concern yourself overly about gyrations in the market. You just keep on. You've got your strategy, that's what you're doing. And yes, when you get statements through from your investment advisors, then the value might have gone up, it might have gone down. Having a mixture of investments, having things, financial assets, maybe small business, having valuables and having a property allows you some security so that you'll have investments and you'll have value when markets go up and when markets goes down. It'll allow you not to be concerned if there's huge changes in the value of the stock market, and if there is deflation wins or if inflation wins, you'll still be okay, and you'll be able to take advantage of the circumstances as they arise. So having too much debt, I think, is really risky at the moment because times are quite uncertain, and these are historically peculiar at times. They have not been repeated in 250 years of capitalism. They are peculiar. So I'll say it again, having too much debt is a real risk. Having diverse assets is really important. And I think this is an important step in allowing you to have financial freedom, which I think is a cornerstone of having a free life. If you want to talk about your personal circumstances, that'd be great, get in touch. Or if you want to comment on what I've discussed in this video, then please put something in the comments section below. I'll be interested to hear your thoughts. Thank you.